A family photo shatters. Glass sprays across the floor as a booted foot steps through the frame. The camera pans up a dozen black-clad men, their faces grim, weapons at the ready. They advance on a trembling man, cornering him against a wall. Just as a fist clenches to strike, a cold, calm voice echoes from the shadows. "I wouldn't do that." The men freeze, turning to face a woman, her face stoic, a high-powered rifle cradled in her arms. The lens focuses on her unblinking eyes as the sound of the bolt clicking into place echoes like a final judgment. The foreclosure notice arrived like a death warrant, a single sheet of paper that had the power to dismantle a decade of hard work and love. For weeks, it had sat on the kitchen counter, an ugly stain on the otherwise tranquil landscape of their home. To Elias Thorne, it was more than just a house. It was the physical embodiment of his life with Sarah. Every nail he'd hammered, every coat of paint he'd brushed on, every creak in the floorboard was a memory. The garden he'd planted for her, the old oak tree he'd strung with lights for their daughter's birthday. It was all here, and it was all about to be taken away. "They say we have until Friday," Elias said, the words catching in his throat. He was standing in the garage, the faint scent of motor oil and sawdust hanging in the air. He was a woodworker, a craftsman, a man who built with his hands. This was a problem he couldn't fix with a hammer and nails. Sarah was silent for a long moment, polishing the stock of an old hunting rifle. She was a different kind of craftsman, one whose work was measured in precision and lethal efficiency. The rifle, an M40A3, was her tool. She called it the Widowmaker, with a grim affection he still didn't fully understand. Sarah was a woman of few words and deliberate actions. Her body was a testament to a life of rigorous training, lean, strong, and coiled with a dangerous stillness. He had known she was a Green Beret sniper when they met, a woman forged in fire and conflict. She had left that life behind for him, or so he thought. "What did they say when you called?" she asked, her voice flat. "Same thing they've been saying for a month. A clerical error, a technicality. They won't even look at the paperwork from our lawyer. They just keep saying we're in default, and that's that." Elias ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit that had grown worse with each passing day. "I tried everything, Sarah. The bank, the corporate office, even the media. They're a ghost. A shell company called Praxis Asset Management. They exist to take, not to talk." Sarah finally looked at him, her dark eyes piercing and focused. "Elias, what's their game plan?" "The letter says they're sending a team on Friday to reclaim the property. They're not even trying to hide it. They want us out, with no due process." A flicker of something, not fear, but a cold, calculating fury crossed Sarah's face. "They're not sending a team of lawyers, are they?" "No," Elias said, the realization hitting him with fresh dread. "It said enforcement team." "Right," she said, nodding slowly. The rifle now seemed less a tool and more an extension of her. "I've dealt with enforcement teams before. They're less interested in paperwork and more interested in showing up with overwhelming force to make a point." She slid the rifle into its padded case, the zipper's metallic whisper sounding louder than a shout in the stillness of the garage. "You're a good man, Elias. You tried to fight this their way. Now we're going to fight it mine!" Her words sent a chill down his spine. It was a promise and a warning. He had always been the one to protect their little world, to keep the monsters at bay. Now he was seeing the real monster, the one that had been sleeping beneath the surface. He wasn't sure he wanted to wake it up. Over the next 2 days, their home transformed. Sarah moved with a purpose Elias had never seen directed at their own lives. She was an architect of battle, and their house was her canvas. She began in the attic, retrieving dusty crates. She brought down gear he'd only ever seen in movies, night vision goggles, comms equipment, and tools that looked like they belonged in a bomb disposal kit. She meticulously checked the security cameras, rerouted the wiring, and set up a satellite feed that bypassed their regular internet. He watched her work, a knot of fear and awe tightening in his stomach. "Sarah," he finally said on Thursday night as she was cleaning a second, smaller rifle, an AR-15, in the living room. "This is our home." "Not a war zone." She didn't look up. "This is our home. And they're trying to take it. What's the difference? There has to be another way. We can barricade the doors. We can call the police. We can—" She finally met his gaze. Her eyes were hard, devoid of the gentle warmth he was used to. "The police will side with the company, Elias. They have the paperwork, a legal document saying they have a right to be here. A few calls from their lawyers and the police will be gone. Or worse, they'll assist them. Barricading the doors is a delaying tactic, and a poor one at that. They have battering rams. They're professionals. You're talking about this like they're a hostile force," he stammered. "They are, Elias. They are. They didn't send a team of accountants. They sent a team of men whose job is to remove a problem. We are the problem. I'm just neutralizing the threat." The word neutralizing hung in the air, cold and heavy. He saw the shift in her, the way the wife he knew was receding, replaced by the soldier. The woman who baked their daughter's favorite cookies was now the woman who was preparing for a siege. "What do you want me to do?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Stay out of sight. Keep the phone charged. When I give the signal, you get our daughter Lily to the storm cellar. It's reinforced. She'll be safe there." She finished cleaning the rifle, her hands moving with a practiced, unsettling grace. Elias wanted to argue, to scream, to demand that she stop. But the look in her eyes was final. It was the same look he had seen in old photos from her service, a fierce, quiet resolve that knew no compromise. He had always admired her strength, but now it felt like a wall between them. The morning arrived, a beautiful day belying the storm brewing. The birds sang, the sun streamed through the kitchen window, and the scent of coffee filled the air. It felt surreal. Elias was a civilian, a man who worried about sawdust and invoices, not strategic choke points and lines of fire. He moved through the house, a stranger in his own home. He looked at the family photos, the small scuff marks on the wall where Lily had learned to walk, the worn spot on the couch where they read books together. This was what he was fighting for, and a new resolve hardened within him. He wasn't a soldier, but he was a husband and a father, and he would stand by her no matter what. He watched from a second-story window as a black sedan and a large, unmarked van pulled up the driveway. The vehicles were sleek, menacing, with tinted windows that hid the faces of the occupants. A dozen men in tactical gear stepped out, their movements precise and coordinated. They fanned out, their hands resting on the handles of what looked like heavy-duty tools and silenced weapons. A man in a crisp suit, his face a mask of cold indifference, walked to the front door and knocked. A single sharp rap that felt like a gunshot. "Praxis Asset Management," the man's voice boomed through a megaphone, devoid of all emotion. "This is your final notice. Please vacate the premises immediately." Elias felt his heart hammer against his ribs. He turned to Sarah, who was standing a few feet behind him, a comms earpiece in her ear. She was still as a statue, observing the men through a pair of binoculars. "Just stay calm, Elias," she said, her voice a low hum. "I'll handle this." "But they're breaking the law," he protested. "The law is a tool, Elias. They're using it to justify their actions." "But they're not here for a legal proceeding. They're here to enforce a narrative. They're here for a fight, and that's what I'm giving them." The man at the door waited a beat, then raised his hand. Two of the enforcers moved forward, one with a battering ram, the other with a crowbar. They approached the front door, ready to breach. And then Sarah moved. She was a blur of motion, her movements fluid and purposeful. She didn't race to the door or fire a warning shot. She simply disappeared. The enforcers were just about to slam the ram into the door when a new sound echoed through the quiet neighborhood. A low, rhythmic, almost musical hum. It was the sound of a series of tripwires laid out in the bushes, connected to a battery-powered device. The enforcers hesitated, looking for the source. They couldn't see the small, nearly invisible wires stretched taut in the undergrowth. Suddenly, a series of small, nearly silent explosions erupted around them. Not bombs, but flashbangs and smoke grenades, disguised to look like garden gnomes and old bird feeders. The men at the door were momentarily blinded and disoriented, their tactical training overwhelmed by the chaos. They scattered, yelling in confusion, their assault now a frantic scramble. The man in the suit stumbled back, his perfect hair now matted with dirt. "What the hell was that?" he shouted into his radio. From the second-story window, Elias watched in silent horror. His wife had just turned their peaceful front lawn into a booby-trapped battlefield. The enforcers, once so confident, were now panicked and confused, their perfectly executed plan in ruins. And then he saw her. On the roof of their neighbor's house, a quarter-mile away, hidden behind a chimney, a ghost in camouflage. She was kneeling, her rifle to her shoulder. He couldn't see her face, but he knew the unwavering focus in her eyes, a single, small metally. The enraged command "escalate" was not just a word, it was a physical shift. The men, once a cohesive unit, now moved with a raw, predatory aggression. The leader, a man Elias had only seen as a pristine corporate automaton, was now a figure of pure, simmering fury, his face a grotesque mask of green and rage. He ripped the earpiece from his ear and threw it to the ground, stomping on it. A second man, tall and broad-shouldered, moved to the back of the van and pulled out a long, narrow case. When he opened it, Elias could see the glint of a high-tech drone, its rotors folded neatly like the wings of a predatory insect. "He's going to find her," Elias whispered to himself, a new kind of fear coiling in his gut. This wasn't just brute force. It was a calculated escalation to a level of surveillance he had no way of countering. He looked back at the screen, at the dozen green-stained men, and at the drone that was now hovering silently in the air. He heard a soft rustling behind him and turned to see Sarah. She had a thermos in her hand and was pouring a cup of coffee. "What are you doing?" he asked, the words tumbling out in a rush of disbelief. "Getting some coffee?" she replied, her voice calm. "The fight's just getting interesting. They're amateurs, Elias. They got rattled by a couple of air horns and some dye. This isn't their terrain. It's ours." Elias couldn't wrap his mind around her composure. She was talking about their home being invaded by what looked like a private army, and she was having a casual chat. "They've got a drone, Sarah. They'll see you on the roof." She took a sip of her coffee, her eyes never leaving his. "No, they won't. I'm not on the roof anymore." He looked back at the screen, at the still image of her kneeling behind the chimney. "But I saw you!" "That's the point," she said, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. "I wanted them to see me. I wanted them to think they had a target. I wanted them to get overconfident. The drone will go to the last known location. It will sweep the area, and it will find nothing. They'll waste valuable time and resources." Elias stared at her, mesmerized by the tactical brilliance of it all. This wasn't a game to her. It was a chess match, and she was playing 10 moves ahead. He watched as the drone, a small, menacing thing, ascended into the sky. It buzzed and whirred, circling the neighbor's house, its camera sweeping the roof and the surrounding trees. The men on the ground, now working with renewed purpose, began to move. They fanned out, no longer a single unit, but smaller teams of 2 and 3, each one circling a different part of the property. "What do I do?" Elias asked. "The question of plea." "You're already doing it," she said. "You're my eyes." "You're watching them, giving me intel. Now tell me what you see." He took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus. This was his part of the war. 3 men are circling around the back near the shed. Another group is moving towards the front porch. The man in the suit is still in the driveway, talking into his radio. "He's looking angry." "Good," she said. "Keep going," he continued to narrate, his voice gaining confidence. He described their movements, their formations, and their gear. He saw the way they moved, the practiced ease of their stride, and realized they were former military. They weren't just muscle for a company. They were specialists, hired guns. A new realization, colder and sharper than the last, struck him. "Sarah, this isn't just about the house. They wouldn't hire people like this for a simple foreclosure." "What's going on?" She finished her coffee and set the cup down. "You're right. It's not about the house. The house is the bait. I used to work for a company like Praxis. They're a front, a black ops group, a private military contractor. They take on jobs for clients who want problems handled without government oversight. But why us? Because of me, Elias. I handled a few sensitive missions for them a decade ago. High profile, high stakes. I got out. I told them I was done. They didn't like it. They don't let you just walk away. I always knew they'd come back for me. They just needed a reason, a point of leverage. The house. You, Lily. That's the leverage. The truth hit him like a punch to the gut. The foreclosure, the financial stress, the endless phone calls. It wasn't a clerical error. It was a planned, deliberate attack on their lives. Everything he had been fighting for was a lie, a smokescreen to flush her out. He felt a wave of anger and betrayal, not at her, but at the world. She had kept this from him, a dark secret that had festered beneath the surface of their peaceful life. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, the hurt in his voice raw. "Because they were watching," she said simply. "They knew my methods. They knew how I worked. The moment I started talking, they would have known. They wanted me to expose myself, to react. And I did, but not in the way they expected." She moved to the window and looked out. The enforcers were closing in. "The drone is still scanning. It's getting closer to the house. Get down to the cellar. Now!" "No," Elias said, his voice firm. "I'm not leaving you." She turned, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. "Elias, this isn't a game. They will kill you to get to me." "Then I'll fight," he said, and he meant it. He wasn't a soldier, but he was no longer a victim. He was a husband and a father, and he would stand by his wife, a warrior in this war. A loud crash from the back of the house made them both jump. One of the teams had used a silenced breaching charge to blow a hole in the back wall. Alarms blared, a harsh wailing sound that sliced through the air. "They're in," Elias said, his voice a low growl. "They're not in the house," Sarah said, her eyes narrowing. That was the shed. They must have thought it was the utility room. "The alarm is to draw them in." "Get to the cellar, Elias! I've got this!" He knew he couldn't fight them with her. She was a sniper, a master of stealth and precision. He would only be a liability. He gripped her hand, his eyes pleading. "Just come back to me. Come back to us." She squeezed his hand, a fleeting, tender gesture. "I will." He ran down the stairs, his feet pounding on the wood. He grabbed Lily, who was playing with her dolls in her room, and rushed her to the cellar. As he barricaded the door, he heard a new sound, the sound of gunfire. It was muted, suppressed, and far away, but he knew what it was. Sarah had engaged. A single loud, distinct crack echoed from the back of the property, followed by the sound of a heavy object hitting the ground. Then silence. A profound, unsettling silence. Elias, with his hand on the cellar door, looked out the small, reinforced window. He couldn't see anything. He listened, his heart in his throat. Had it worked? The enforcers had regrouped outside the shed. The leader, his face now a mask of cold professionalism, gave new orders. "She's good, too good. This isn't a raid. It's a hunt. And we're not the hunters. We're the bait." The man who was carrying the drone had fallen, and a small red stain was spreading across his jacket. The drone lay beside him, its rotors shattered. The leader stared at the fallen man, then at the house, a slow, grim smile spreading across his lips. He pulled out a large, heavy-duty phone from his pocket and pressed a button. "Boss, this isn't a simple reclamation. This is a personal matter now. She's here." "I'll get her." "Tell him. Tell him I've got this." The phone crackled with a response. "No, you've had your fun." "Stand down. I'm coming to take this matter into my own hands." The leader's face went white. He looked at the house, at the shattered drone, at his fallen comrade, and then back at the phone. "But, sir, you can't be here." "I have to." A new voice boomed through the phone. A voice that was both familiar and utterly terrifying to Elias. It was the man from Praxis, the man who had ordered the hit on their home. "Because she's not the only ghost from my past, The agony of the choice was a physical weight on Elias's chest, a vice squeezing the air from his lungs. His mother's pleading voice echoed in the terrifying, deafening silence that followed the end of the call. He looked from the phone in his hand to Sarah's face, a mask of grim determination. He was caught between two worlds, the past and the present, each one demanding a sacrifice he wasn't sure he could make. "He's lying," Sarah said, her voice a low, steady hum. "He's a master manipulator, Elias. He knows you're his weakness. He's using her to get to you. What if he isn't?" Elias's voice was a desperate plea. "What if he actually has her?" "Sarah, this is my mother!" A moment of pure, raw emotion flashed in Sarah's eyes. It was a rare glimpse of the woman beneath the soldier. "I know, and I'm going to get her back. But we can't go out there. Not like this. This is what he wants. He wants to separate us. He wants to make you a target. He's already made me a target, Elias shouted, the words echoing in the tense silence of the room. He's here. He's in a helicopter! And he has my mother. Vance's voice came through the megaphone again, a smooth, sinister tone. Tick-tock, Elias. The clock is ticking. Are you going to be a hero or a coward? Are you going to save your mother, or are you going to hide behind the woman who betrayed me? The word betrayed was a poisoned dart, and it landed squarely on Sarah. She flinched, a small, almost imperceptible movement, but Elias saw it. The accusation was personal, and it cut deeper than any bullet. He looked at her, at the woman who had protected him from so much, and saw a glimmer of her past, a dark, dangerous history he was only beginning to understand. Elias, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I have to do this alone. I can't risk you getting hurt. No, he said, his voice firm. We're in this together. You said so yourself. We're fighting this war together. As if on cue, a new voice, a woman's voice, echoed from the front of the house. Don't listen to him, Elias. He's a snake. He's not worth your time. It was the woman from the helicopter, her voice sharp and cold. And you, Sarah, she continued, you always had to do things the hard way. He's here to remind you that some things are non-negotiable. That's his number 2, Sarah muttered, her eyes scanning the security cameras on her comms screen. Her name's Echo. She's good. She's a ghost, too. Echo's voice came again, this time closer, a chillingly calm tone. You can't win this, Sarah. We have you surrounded. We have your weaknesses. What do you have? A civilian husband and a daughter. You can't protect them all. Elias felt a cold rage bubble up inside him. They were talking about his family, about the people he loved, as if they were pawns in a sick game. He looked at Sarah, at the fierce resolve in her eyes. She was a warrior, but he knew her. She was also a mother, and the thought of her daughter in danger would break her. Let's go, Elias, Sarah said, her voice a low growl. We're going to hit them where they least expect it. She led him to the kitchen, where a trap door in the floor, long forgotten and covered by a rug, led to a crawl space beneath the house. I want you to get to the back of the house through here, she said, her eyes fixed on his. You'll see a small hatch. It's for emergency exits. It leads to the sewer system. You have to get to the street and call the police. Tell them there's an active shooter situation. It's our only chance to get a third party involved. A real one. And you? He asked, his voice shaking. I'm going to take out the helicopter, she said, her voice flat. And then I'm going to find Vance and deal with him once and for all. Elias stared at her, a profound sense of awe and terror gripping him. She wasn't just planning to fight them. She was planning to end it. She was going to kill them. He knew it. This wasn't about tactics anymore. It was about survival. He nodded, a lump in his throat. He looked at her, at the woman who had loved him, the woman who had taught him how to love, and he knew he couldn't leave her. He couldn't. I'm not going, he said, his voice firm. I'm staying with you. Elias, don't be a fool, she said, a flash of frustration in her eyes. You're a liability. I'm your husband, he said, and he didn't back down. And I'm not leaving you. A new sound, a loud, resounding thud echoed through the house. The front door had been breached. The enforcers were in the house, moving with a new, terrifying purpose. Elias looked at Sarah, his heart pounding in his chest. She looked at him, and for a fleeting moment, the mask of the soldier fell away, and he saw the fear in her eyes. All right, she said, her voice a low growl. Then you'll do exactly as I say. No questions. You are my eyes and ears. You will do what I tell you, when I tell you to do it. He nodded, the terror a cold knot in his stomach. They were in this together. He knew that now. He was in a war, and his wife, a Green Beret sniper, was his only hope. Vance watched from the helicopter, a cold, predatory smile on his lips. He's not running, he said into his comms. He's staying with her, the fool. He's putting his faith in a broken tool. Echo was on the ground, directing her men with a quiet, lethal efficiency. He's on the inside. He's going to try to break through the defenses and get a bead on us. I want 2 men in the back, 2 in the front. We flush her out. Then we deal with the husband? Vance's smile widened. No, Echo, you don't understand. He's not a liability. He's the one I want. He's the reason I'm here. He's going to be a key player in this operation." He looked down at the house, a glint of something malicious in his eyes. He just doesn't know it yet. The helicopter shifted, a subtle, almost imperceptible movement, and Vance looked down at a map on his screen. A red dot blinked, a small pinpoint of light on a suburban street. A single triumphant laugh escaped his lips. The map was of the sewer system, and the red dot was their storm cellar, the one Elias had put Lily in. The man had a plan, and it was a terrible one, and Elias was about to walk right into it. The revelation of Vance's plan hit Elias like a physical blow. He wasn't just here to capture Sarah. He was here to destroy her by using their daughter Lily as the ultimate leverage. The storm cellar, their sanctuary, was now the epicenter of the trap. Vance's cruel, triumphant laughter over the comms was a sound of pure, unadulterated evil. Elias's heart pounded against his ribs, a frantic, terrified drum. He looked at Sarah, and in her eyes he saw the same horrifying realization. "He knows," Elias whispered, his voice a tremor. "He knows where Lily is." Sarah's face, which had been a mask of stone, cracked with a jolt of raw fear. It was a fleeting moment of vulnerability that was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a cold, searing rage Elias had never seen before. This wasn't about a house or a life of peace anymore. This was a direct, personal threat to the one thing she held more sacred than anything else. "We have to go back to her," Elias urged, his hand reaching for the trapdoor handle. "No!" Sarah's voice was sharp, a whip-crack command. She grabbed his arm, her grip iron strong. "That's exactly what he wants. He wants us to rush in, blinded by panic. He wants us to walk into his trap." She pulled him toward the utility closet, her movements fluid and purposeful. "He's not just a man. He's a chess master, and he's been planning this long before we ever knew. We have to beat him at his own game." Inside the closet, Sarah began pulling out gear Elias didn't even know they owned. A series of small, sleek black devices. "Distraction charges," she explained, her voice low and efficient. "They're non-lethal, but they'll give us the cover we need. We can't fight him head-on, Elias. We have to outsmart him." She handed him a comms device and another small charge. "I'm going to create a diversion. You're going to get to Lily. You're her guardian, Elias. You get her out of there, and I'll handle Vance." "No," Elias said again, his voice firm. "We're not splitting up. We're a team, remember?" A flicker of respect and maybe even a hint of pride crossed Sarah's face. "Then you'll do exactly as I say. Your job is to be my eyes and ears. You tell me everything you see. He's going to be expecting a sniper, but he's not going to be expecting a husband." He looked at her, at the quiet, lethal force she was. She was a sniper, a Green Beret, a ghost from a past that was now their reality. And she was also the woman who loved him, the woman he had a family with. He nodded, a silent promise to do whatever it took to protect her, to protect their daughter, to protect the life they had built together. Sarah gave him a quick, hard nod, a gesture of absolute trust. She kicked the door open, the sound echoing through the house, and tossed one of the distraction charges down the hall. A flash of light, followed by a concussive bang, deafened them both for a moment. Then she was gone, a phantom in the chaotic aftermath. Elias ran to the utility closet and looked at the security monitors. He could see two of Vance's enforcers, armed and armored, moving with a chilling professionalism. They were sweeping the halls, their movements precise, their eyes locked on the door. He had to act. He had to be more than just a civilian. "Two men, West Corridor," he whispered into the comms. "They're in position, waiting." "Got it!" Sarah's voice was a soft hum in his ear. "Now I need you to create a diversion in the living room. Use a distraction charge. Make it loud." Elias took a deep breath, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm. He ran to the living room, a long, exposed space with large windows overlooking the yard. The room was a death trap, but he had no choice. He pulled the pin on the charge and tossed it toward the large picture window, the shattering glass a deafening alarm. The charge went off with a concussive blast, a flash of light and a roar of sound. The two enforcers in the hallway flinched, their attention drawn to the living room. It was all the time Sarah needed. Elias watched on the monitor as she moved with a silent, deadly purpose, her rifle a third arm as she moved toward the storm cellar. He knew what was coming next. The confrontation. Sarah versus Vance, the hunter versus the one who trained her. He moved to the back of the house, his eyes fixed on the monitor, a silent prayer on his lips. He was the one who could see the entire battlefield, and he had to be her eyes. Vance watched the chaos unfold from the helicopter, his face a mask of disappointment. "She's playing me," he muttered, his voice cold. "She's not coming for me. She's going for the child. What about the husband?" Echo's voice came over the comms, a hint of concern in her tone. "He's the bait," Vance said, a new, sinister smile on his lips. "Let her have him. He's a liability." "I want the child. She's the key to this whole operation." He motioned to the pilot, and the helicopter began to descend, a silent, menacing shadow over the house. He was going to the storm cellar. He was going to finish this himself. Elias watched in horror on the comms monitor. Vance was moving. He was on the ground, his face a grim, predatory mask. He was a man of action, a man of power, and he was coming for his daughter, Sarah. Elias shouted into the comms. "He's going to the storm cellar. He's going for Lily!" A moment of pure, terrifying silence followed. Sarah was a phantom, and her silence was a louder message than any words. He knew she was moving, a quiet, deadly force, and he knew she was going to confront him. He ran to the trap door, pulling it open. The smell of the earth, the scent of fresh soil, and the faint, sweet scent of Lily's toys filled his senses. He crawled down into the cellar, the darkness a suffocating blanket. He could hear the faint sound of Lily's breathing, the quiet, peaceful rhythm that was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. He moved silently, his hands outstretched, feeling his way through the dark. He found the small makeshift bed they had made for her, and he reached out. His fingers brushed against her small, warm body, and he exhaled a long, shaky breath. She was safe. For now. Then he heard it. The sound of a footstep above him, a heavy, measured tread that was not Sarah's. It was Vance. He had beaten them to the cellar. Elias froze, his heart in his throat. He had to be quiet. He had to protect Lily. He pulled her close, a small, terrified, whimpering sound escaping her lips. Above him, the trap door opened, a rectangle of light piercing the darkness. The silhouette of a man stood in the doorway, a menacing shadow against the sky. It was Vance. He was smiling, a cruel, triumphant expression on his face. "I knew you wouldn't be able to stay away, Elias," he said, his voice a low, triumphant purr. "She's a liability and you're the hero. But you forgot one thing. I'm the one who decides who lives and who dies." As he spoke, a small red dot, a pinpoint of light, appeared on Vance's forehead. It was a laser sight, and it was coming from a window in the house, a window Elias knew Sarah was in. Vance froze, his smile vanishing. He was a soldier, a hunter, and he knew a trap when he saw one. He was exposed, alone, and in the open. The predator had become the prey. "Sarah," he said, his voice a low growl, "you always did have a flair for the dramatic." Then, a new voice, a woman's voice, echoed from the house, a cold, chilling sound. "And you, Sterling," Echo said, her voice filled with a triumphant glee. "You were always a fool. You underestimate everyone, especially me." From the shadows, another red dot, a second laser sight appeared on Sarah's chest. Echo had outmaneuvered her. She was now in the crosshairs. Elias watched in horror as his entire world hung in the balance. Two snipers, one from the past and one from the present, locked in a deadly game of chess.